I think I didn't do anything wrong, just what everyone does sometimes, texting someone else when things get boring at home. But the day I got official papers with my own photo as evidence, I realized my husband wasn't playing around. He proved he was different, and now everything is falling apart. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The problem with Deacon was that he never really saw me anymore. 7 years of marriage, 1 beautiful daughter, and somewhere along the way, we'd become roommates who split bills and took turns with bedtime stories. He'd come home from his accounting firm, grunt hello, and disappear into his laptop until dinner. Even then, conversation felt like a chore. "How was your day?" I'd ask, setting down his plate. "Fine, busy." He'd barely look up from his phone, scrolling through work emails or sports scores. That's when Ben Foster started messaging me on Facebook. "Hey Philomel, saw your post about the HR conference. Still working in people management? You always were good with people." Ben had been my college boyfriend. Charming, funny, the kind of guy who made you feel like the most interesting person in the room. Seeing his name pop up in my notifications felt like finding $20 in an old jacket pocket. "Hi, Ben." "Yes, still dealing with office drama and vacation requests. How are you?" What started as casual catching up quickly became the highlight of my day. Ben remembered things about me that Deacon had forgotten, how I loved terrible reality TV, my dream of traveling to Italy, the way I used to laugh at his impressions of our professors. "You deserve someone who appreciates how amazing you are," he texted one evening while I was loading the dishwasher. Deacon was upstairs giving Ella her bath, and I could hear them laughing together through the ceiling. I found myself checking my phone constantly, crafting witty responses, feeling that familiar flutter of excitement when his name appeared on my screen. It was just texting, just friendship, just harmless fun. "You're on that thing more than Ella," Deacon commented one evening, nodding toward my phone as I quickly closed the messaging app. "It's work stuff," I said automatically. "You know how it is." He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Deacon never pushed. That was part of the problem. He was so passive, so willing to accept whatever explanation I gave him. A real husband would fight for his wife's attention, wouldn't he? When my sister Jenna came over for dinner that weekend, I found myself venting about Deacon's emotional distance. "He acts like I'm just part of the furniture," I complained as we prepared salad in the kitchen. "When's the last time he complimented me, or planned a date, or even asked about my day and actually listened to the answer?" Jenna, at 29 and perpetually single, rolled her eyes. "Honey, you've been together since you were kids. Of course the spark is gone. Maybe it's time to remind him what he's got." "What do you mean?" She grinned mischievously. "A little harmless flirting never hurt anyone. Make him jealous. Show him other men still find you attractive." The idea felt both thrilling and terrifying. "I don't know." "Phil, you're 32, not 92. You deserve to feel desired. If Deacon can't be bothered to make you feel special, maybe someone else should." That night, after Deacon had fallen asleep watching Netflix on the couch, I took a selfie in the bathroom mirror. Nothing inappropriate. Just me in my favorite blue dress, the one that brought out my eyes, with a slight smile and my hair falling in soft waves around my shoulders. Dinner out with the family, trying to look presentable. I sent it to Ben before I could change my mind. His response came immediately. "Wow. Deacon is a lucky man. You look absolutely stunning." The compliment sent warmth spreading through my chest. When was the last time Deacon had called me stunning? When was the last time he'd called me anything other than Han or Ella's mom? I was still smiling at my phone when Deacon appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Everything okay? You've been in here a while." My phone dinged with another message from Ben. Deacon's eyes flicked to the screen, but I quickly turned it face down. "Just checking work emails," I said, brushing past him toward the bedroom. You know how it is. But as I settled into bed, I caught Deacon watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Hurt? Suspicion? But then he turned away, and I told myself I was imagining things. After all, it was just a photo, just a compliment, just harmless fun. The texting with Ben escalated quickly after that. Good morning messages, funny memes throughout the day, long conversations about everything and nothing. He was going through his own marital struggles, he told me, and understood exactly how I felt. My wife barely looks at me anymore, he confessed. Sometimes I wonder if we're both just staying for the kids. I know exactly what you mean. Deacon and I are like strangers living in the same house. You deserve so much better, Phil. You always did. At work, I found myself rushing through tasks so I could respond to Ben's messages. My colleague Sarah noticed my improved mood. Someone's chipper lately, she said, poking her head into my cubicle. New skincare routine? I laughed, quickly minimizing the chat window. Just feeling good, I guess. But the truth was, Ben made me feel alive again. He remembered details from our college days, asked thoughtful questions about my job, and made me laugh in ways I'd almost forgotten were possible. When he suggested meeting for coffee to catch up properly, it felt like the natural next step. Just as friends, I told myself. Old friends catching up. Nothing wrong with that. We met at Cafe Luna downtown, a cozy spot with exposed brick walls and the kind of intimate lighting that made everyone look beautiful. Ben looked good, really good. The years had been kind to him, adding distinguished gray at his temples and laugh lines around his eyes. Phil, he said, standing to hug me. The embrace lasted a beat longer than it should have, and I breathed in his cologne, something expensive and unfamiliar. You look incredible. We talked for 2 hours, about college, about our jobs, about the ways our marriages had disappointed us. Ben was a good listener, nodding sympathetically as I described Deacon's emotional unavailability. He's not a bad person, I found myself saying. He's just absent. Like he's going through the motions of being a husband without actually feeling anything. That must be so lonely, Ben said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. You're such a vibrant, passionate person. You need someone who sees that. His hand was warm, his touch electric. I didn't pull away. When he offered to drive me back to work, I accepted. As his car pulled up to my office building, several of my colleagues were returning from their own lunch break. I saw Sarah's eyebrows raise as I got out of the sleek BMW, Ben's hand briefly touching my lower back as he said goodbye. Thanks for lunch, I said, probably louder than necessary. It was great catching up, but the damage was done. Within an hour, my phone buzzed with messages in our office group chat. Sarah. Was that Philomel getting dropped off by some mystery man? Janet. Looked cozy. New client? David. Lucky guy, whoever he is. I felt my cheeks burn as I scrolled through the messages. Deacon was in this group chat. We'd added him last year when we were planning the office holiday party. I watched the little indicators show that he'd read the messages, but he didn't respond. That evening, he was quieter than usual. We went through our normal routine. Dinner, Ella's homework, bath time, but I could feel him watching me. When I excused myself to check work emails after putting Ella to bed, he didn't comment, but his silence felt loaded. Had fun today, Ben had texted. We should do it again soon. Me too. It was nice to talk to someone who actually listens. Your husband doesn't know what he has. If you were mine? He left the sentence unfinished, but my imagination filled in the blanks. I found myself smiling at my phone, that familiar flutter of excitement returning. Good news from work? Deacon's voice made me jump. He was standing in the doorway holding 2 cups of tea. Oh, just, the usual. I quickly closed the messaging app and accepted the cup he offered. Thanks. We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes before Deacon cleared his throat. The group chat was interesting today. My heart skipped. Oh, that? Just an old college friend. We grabbed coffee to catch up. Ben Foster? The fact that he knew the name surprised me. You remember Ben? I remember you dated him for 2 years. I remember you said he was the love of your life before we got together. There was no accusation in his voice, just a flat statement of facts. Somehow, that made it worse. Deacon, it was just coffee. We're both married adults catching up. There's nothing... I didn't say there was. But his eyes told a different story. For the first time in months, Deacon was really looking at me, really seeing me. The attention should have felt good, but instead, it felt like being caught in headlights. The next day, a bouquet of flowers arrived at my office. Beautiful white roses with a card that simply read, "For brightening my day." B. I should have thrown them away. Should have told Ben it was inappropriate. Instead, I put them in a vase on my desk and felt a thrill every time someone complimented them. Secret admirer? Sarah asked with a knowing grin. Something like that, I replied, unable to keep the smile off my face. I didn't notice her taking a photo until it was too late. Within minutes, it was in the group chat with a string of heart-eye emojis and speculation about my mystery man. This time, Deacon's response came immediately. Congratulations. One word, but it felt like a door slamming shut. The weekly family dinner at Deacon's parents' house had always been a minefield, but that Sunday felt particularly tense. Linda Crane had never warmed to me, and I could feel her disapproving gaze following me around their pristine dining room as I helped set the table. "How's work, dear?" she asked with false sweetness, her tone suggesting she already knew about the flowers and the group chat speculation. "Busy as always," I replied, arranging napkins with more precision than necessary. "You know how it is in HR. Everyone's drama becomes your problem." Deacon's younger brother Jared was there with his girlfriend, and Charles was grilling something on the back patio. The scene should have been warm and familial, but I felt like I was performing in a play where everyone else knew the script except me. "Daddy, can I sit next to you?" Ella asked Deacon as we gathered around the table. She'd been doing that more lately, choosing him over me, drawing pictures of the two of them, asking him to read bedtime stories instead of me. "Of course, sweetheart," Deacon said, lifting her onto the chair beside him. His smile for our daughter was genuine and warm, so different from the polite mask he wore with me now. As we passed dishes around the table, I found myself growing irritated by Deacon's passivity. He sat there like a lump, contributing nothing to the conversation, barely acknowledging my presence. The contrast with Ben's attentiveness felt stark. "You know," I said, cutting into my chicken with perhaps more force than necessary. "I had lunch with an old friend this week. It's amazing how some people never change. Still charming, still funny, still know how to make a woman feel appreciated." The table went quiet. Linda's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "That's nice, dear," Charles said carefully. "Old friends can be wonderful." "Oh yes," I continued, warming to my theme. "Ben always was good at conversation. Not like some people who think grunting counts as communication." I shot a pointed look at Deacon, who was cutting Ella's chicken into smaller pieces with methodical precision. "Some husbands," I added with a laugh that sounded forced even to my own ears, "act like they're doing you a favor just by showing up. Like marriage is something that happens to them instead of something they participate in." Jenna, who had arrived late and missed the earlier tension, laughed appreciatively. "Preach, sister. Men think they deserve medals for basic human decency." But everyone else looked uncomfortable. Ella had stopped eating and was looking between Deacon and me with worried eyes. "Maybe we could talk about something else," Miriam, my mother, suggested quietly. She'd come with Jenna and looked embarrassed by my behavior. "I'm just being honest," I said, taking a large sip of wine. Marriage is work, right? Both people have to put in effort. Some people understand that, and others... I shrugged meaningfully. Deacon finally looked up from Ella's plate. What would you like me to do differently, Philomel? The question caught me off guard. It was direct, sincere, and asked in front of his entire family. I should have softened, should have recognized the olive branch he was extending. Instead, I felt cornered and lashed out. I'd like you to act like you're married to me instead of just tolerating my presence. I'd like you to show some passion, some interest, some sign that you remember why you married me in the first place. Mommy, Ella said in a small voice, why are you being mean to Daddy? The words hit like a slap. The entire table was staring at me now. Linda with obvious disapproval, Charles with disappointment, Jared with second-hand embarrassment. I'm not being mean, sweetheart, I said, forcing my voice to gentleness. Mommy and Daddy are just talking. But Ella had already turned away from me, burying her face against Deacon's shoulder. He wrapped his arms around her protectively, and something in his expression shifted, hardened. I think we should go, he said, quietly. The drive home was silent except for Ella's sniffles from the back seat. When we got home, Deacon carried her upstairs for her bath without a word to me. I poured myself another glass of wine and pulled out my phone. Family dinner from hell. Sometimes, I wonder why I even try. Ben's response came quickly. You deserve better than people who don't appreciate you. Want to talk about it? I locked myself in the downstairs bathroom and called him. For 20 minutes, I vented about Deacon's family, about his passivity, about how alone I felt in my own marriage. You're an amazing woman, Phil, Ben said. Any man who can't see that is an idiot. Thank you, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. I needed to hear that. You know I've always cared about you, right? Even after all these years, you're still the most beautiful, intelligent, fascinating woman I know. The words were like a balm on my wounded pride. We talked until my wine glass was empty and I felt human again. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, I caught a glimpse of movement in the hallway mirror. Deacon was standing at the top of the stairs, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't read. How long had he been there? How much had he heard? But when I looked again, he was gone, and I told myself I'd imagined it. After all, Deacon never paid that much attention to anything I did. Something shifted after that family dinner. Deacon became even more distant, but in a different way, less absent-minded and more deliberately remote. He started locking his phone, something he'd never done before. He began staying late at work, texting me brief updates about when he'd be home instead of calling. Working late. Don't wait up. Client meeting ran over. Home by 9. Grabbing dinner with colleagues. Leftovers in fridge. The role reversal was infuriating. Now he was the one being secretive, the one offering minimal explanations, the one acting like he had something to hide. Two can play at this game, I muttered to myself as I deleted another text thread with Ben before Deacon came home. Ben and I had been talking more frequently, during lunch breaks, after Ella went to bed, even early in the morning before Deacon woke up. The conversations had grown more intimate, more flirtatious, more dangerous. I can't stop thinking about you, he'd written that morning, about what it would be like if we'd never broken up. We can't think like that, I'd replied, even as my heart raced. We're both married, are we? Really? Or are we both just going through the motions? The question haunted me as I went through my daily routine. Was I really married? Or was I just playing house with a man who barely seemed to notice I existed? When Deacon started questioning my schedule, I felt justified in my defensiveness. You're one to talk, I said, when he asked why I'd been getting home late from work. At least I tell you where I am. You just disappear for hours with vague excuses about client meetings. My meetings are legitimate business, he said evenly. And my work isn't? I didn't say that. You implied it. You always imply things instead of just saying what you mean. It's like pulling teeth to get a straight answer from you about anything. He studied me for a long moment. Where were you today between noon and 2? The question was so direct, so unlike him, that I felt caught off guard. I had been at lunch with Ben again, but Deacon didn't need to know that. I had a work lunch. Why? With whom? A vendor. What is this? An interrogation? Which vendor? My irritation flared. I don't remember every detail of every boring business lunch, Deacon. Unlike some people, I don't document every minute of my day. But even as I said it, I felt a chill, because that's exactly what Deacon would do. Document everything. It was his nature, his training as an accountant, details, receipts, evidence. The thought should have worried me more than it did. At work, my colleagues had started treating me differently. The jokes about my mystery man had died down, replaced by awkward silences when I joined conversations. Sarah, who used to be friendly, now gave me polite smiles and found excuses to cut our interactions short. Is everything okay? I asked her one afternoon. You seem distant lately. She looked uncomfortable. Phil, I like you, but maybe you should be more careful. People are talking. About what? About the flowers, the lunch dates, the way you light up when your phone buzzes. You're married. It doesn't look good. Her words stung because they held a grain of truth I wasn't ready to acknowledge. But instead of taking the warning to heart, I felt defensive. I'm not doing anything wrong, I said. I'm allowed to have friends. Of course you are. Just be careful, okay? That evening, I decided to confront Deacon about his recent behavior. If he was going to act suspicious and secretive, he could at least be honest about why. I found him in his home office, laptop open, papers spread across the desk. He quickly closed a folder when I walked in. We need to talk, I said. About what? About whatever's been going on with you lately. The late nights. The locked phone. The way you've been watching me like I'm some kind of criminal. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those calm brown eyes that had once made me feel safe and now made me feel exposed. Are you happy, Philomel? The question wasn't what I'd expected. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Are you happy? In this marriage, in this life we've built together? I wanted to say yes. Should have said yes. But the word stuck in my throat. I don't know, I admitted. Are you? I was, he said quietly. I thought we both were. Things change, Deacon. People grow apart. It doesn't have to be anyone's fault. Doesn't it? There was something in his tone that made me nervous. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just, if you're not happy, maybe we should talk about what that means. For us, for Ella. The conversation felt like it was heading somewhere I wasn't ready to go. I think you're overreacting. Every marriage goes through rough patches. Is that what this is? A rough patch? What else would it be? He was quiet for so long, I thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. I guess we'll see. Later that night, as I was doing laundry, I found a receipt in Deacon's jacket pocket. Hartwell & Associates, attorneys at law. The date was from the previous week, and the amount made my stomach drop. A consultation. He'd paid for a legal consultation. My hands shook as I stared at the small piece of paper. This was real. Whatever game we'd been playing, whatever dance of accusation and denial we'd been engaged in, Deacon was taking concrete steps. I should have been scared. Should have realized that my harmless friendship with Ben had consequences I wasn't prepared for. Instead, I felt angry. How dare he go behind my back? How dare he make me the villain when he was the one who'd checked out of our marriage first? I took a photo of the receipt and sent it to Ben with a message. Found this in his pocket. I think he's planning something. Ben's response was immediate. What kind of lawyer? The divorce kind, I think. Jesus, Phil, are you okay? I don't know. I'm scared. Want me to come over? We could talk in person. The offer was tempting. Too tempting. The house felt empty and cold. Deacon was locked in his office, and I felt more alone than I had in years. No, I typed reluctantly. Too risky. Then let's meet tomorrow. You shouldn't go through this alone. As I lay in bed that night, listening to Deacon's steady breathing beside me, I wondered how we'd gotten here. When had we become strangers sharing a bed? When had our marriage become something that required lawyers and secret consultations? But even as I asked myself these questions, I was already planning where to meet Ben the next day. After all, Deacon had started this. I was just protecting myself. The papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who looked apologetic as he handed me the manila envelope. Deacon had already left for work, and Ella was at school, so I was alone when I opened it and saw my own face staring back at me. It was the selfie I'd sent Ben weeks ago, the one in my blue dress, smiling at the camera in our bathroom mirror. But now it was printed on legal paper, stapled to a petition for divorce, labeled as Exhibit A in Deacon's careful handwriting. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. There were screenshots of text messages, printed emails, receipts from our coffee dates, even a photo someone had taken of Ben and me at Cafe Luna, sitting too close, his hand covering mine on the table. Everything was there, documented, organized, presented with the methodical precision that made Deacon good at his job and apparently devastating as an adversary. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out at me. Adultery, emotional affair, unfit mother, full custody. Full custody. He was trying to take Ella away from me. I called him immediately, my fingers shaking as I dialed his number. You got the papers? He said without preamble. Deacon, what the hell is this? It's exactly what it looks like. You can't be serious. You're going to destroy our family over some text messages? I'm not destroying anything, Philomel. I'm documenting what you already destroyed. His voice was calm, professional, like he was discussing a client's tax returns instead of the end of our marriage. It was just texting, just friendship. You're making this into something it wasn't. Am I? There was a pause, and I heard papers rustling. Would you like me to read some of your friendly messages aloud? The ones where you told Ben you wished you'd never married me? The ones where you described our bedroom in detail? The ones where you made plans to meet him at the Marriott downtown? My blood turned to ice. The Marriott. We'd talked about it, yes, but I'd never actually gone through with it. You made the reservation, Philomel. I have the confirmation email. The room spun around me. I had made a reservation one desperate evening when Deacon had been particularly cold and Ben had been particularly persuasive. But I'd canceled it the next day, horrified by what I'd almost done, hadn't I? Deacon, please, can we talk about this like adults? Can we try counseling? It's too late for that. It's never too late. Think about Ella. Think about what this will do to her. I am thinking about Ella. That's why I'm doing this. The line went dead. I called Ben immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and again. Finally, I sent a frantic text. Deacon is divorcing me. He has evidence. We need to talk. Hours passed with no response. By the time Ella came home from school, I'd managed to compose myself enough to help with homework and make dinner. But she could sense something was wrong. Mommy, are you sick? She asked, looking up from her math worksheet. Just tired, sweetheart. How was school? Good. Is Daddy coming home for dinner? I don't know. The honesty slipped out before I could stop it. Deacon didn't come home that night, or the next. When I called his office, his secretary said he was unavailable. When I called his parents' house, Linda hung up on me. Jenna came over on Thursday evening armed with wine and indignation. He's being ridiculous, she declared, pouring generous glasses for both of us. So you had a friendship with an ex. Big deal. Half the married people in America do the same thing. He has pictures, Jenna. Text messages. He's been documenting everything for weeks, maybe months. What a creep. Who does that to their own wife? Her outrage felt validating, but it didn't change my situation. He's trying to get full custody of Ella. He can't do that. You're a good mother. Am I? The question had been haunting me for days. I've been so focused on Ben, on feeling sorry for myself, that I barely noticed Ella pulling away from me. You're human, Phil. You made some mistakes, but that doesn't make you a bad mother. But as we talked, I found myself remembering moments I'd tried to forget, times when I'd been short with Ella because I was distracted by my phone, dinners where I'd been physically present but mentally elsewhere, bedtime stories cut short because Ben was calling. Maybe Deacon had a point. Maybe I had been a bad mother. The thought was unbearable. When my mother called that weekend, her voice was strained. Philomel, I got a call from Linda Crane. She says Deacon is filing for divorce. Mom, I can explain. She says there's another man involved. The disappointment in her voice was worse than anger would have been. It's not what you think. It was just... I was lonely, Mom. Deacon had checked out of our marriage completely. I just wanted to feel like someone cared about me. And Ella? What about her? What about her? How is she handling this? Where is she staying while you and Deacon sort this out? The question hit me like a physical blow. She's with Deacon, at his parents' house. Oh, honey. Mom's voice was soft with sympathy, but I could hear the judgment underneath. What have you done? I wanted to defend myself, to explain how neglected I'd felt, how Deacon's emotional distance had driven me to seek connection elsewhere. But sitting in my empty house, surrounded by evidence of my family's destruction, the words felt hollow. What had I done? The answer came in the form of another legal document, delivered on Monday morning. A temporary custody order, granting Deacon primary physical custody of Ella pending the divorce proceedings. I was allowed supervised visitation twice a week. Supervised. Like I was a danger to my own daughter. As I stared at the official seal, the legal language, the cold bureaucratic dismantling of my life, I finally understood what Deacon had been trying to tell me. Actions have consequences, choices have costs, and I was about to pay for mine. The family courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sickly and uncomfortable wooden benches that reminded me of church pews. I sat with my hastily hired attorney, a harried-looking woman named Patricia, who'd been honest about my chances. Your husband's documentation is thorough, she'd warned me during our consultation. Timestamps, screenshots, witness statements from your co-workers. He's built a compelling case for adultery and emotional abandonment. But I never actually slept with Ben, I'd protested. Doesn't that count for something? Emotional affairs can be just as damaging as physical ones in the court's eyes, especially when there's evidence of intent. The Marriott reservation. Even though I'd canceled it, even though nothing had happened, the intent was there, in black and white. Deacon sat across the aisle with his attorney, a sharp-eyed man in an expensive suit who looked like he ate divorce cases for breakfast. Deacon wore his best navy suit, the one I'd helped him pick out for job interviews years ago. He looked calm, professional, like he was attending a business meeting instead of the dismantling of our family. Behind him sat his parents, Linda and Charles, along with Jared. Linda caught my eye once and shook her head sadly, as if I were a stray dog that had bitten the hand that fed it. My side of the courtroom was mostly empty. Jenna sat behind me, radiating defiant support, but my mother had stayed home with Ella. Someone needs to watch her, Mom had said, but I suspected she couldn't bear to witness my public humiliation. When the judge called our case, my attorney stood and began what felt like a futile defense. Your Honor, while my client acknowledges that her marriage was troubled, she maintains that her relationship with Mr. Foster was primarily emotional support during a difficult time. There is no evidence of physical adultery, and Mrs. Crane has been a devoted mother to her daughter for 7 years. Deacon's attorney rose with predatory confidence. Your Honor, we have extensive documentation showing that Mrs. Crane engaged in a deliberate pattern of deception and emotional infidelity over several months. She made reservations at a hotel for the purpose of meeting her paramour. She sent intimate photographs and messages while in the family home. She publicly humiliated her husband at family gatherings and prioritized her affair over her responsibilities as a wife and mother. The word paramour made me flinch. It sounded so tawdry, so calculated. That wasn't what Ben had been to me, was it? I'd like to call Deacon Crane to testify, the attorney continued. Watching Deacon take the stand was surreal. This was the man who'd held my hand during labor, who'd stayed up all night when Ella had pneumonia, who'd once promised to love me for better or worse. Now he was going to testify against me in open court. Mr. Crane, can you describe the state of your marriage before your wife began her relationship with Mr. Foster? Deacon's voice was steady, matter of fact. We had our challenges, like any couple. I worked long hours and I know I wasn't always as attentive as I should have been, but I thought we were committed to working through our problems together. When did you first become aware of your wife's relationship with Mr. Foster? I started noticing changes in her behavior in March. She was secretive with her phone, staying out late, making excuses. When I saw the messages in the office group chat about flowers and lunch dates, I became concerned. What did you do with these concerns? I tried to talk to her about it. I asked directly if she was happy, if there was something we needed to address. She denied there was any problem and accused me of being paranoid and controlling. The words stung because they were true. I had said those things. I had turned his legitimate concerns back on him, made him doubt his own perceptions. What led you to seek legal counsel? Deacon was quiet for a moment, and for the first time his composure cracked slightly. I found out she'd made a hotel reservation, for her and another man. That's when I realized she wasn't just unhappy. She was planning to leave our marriage entirely. But she canceled that reservation, didn't she? She did, but the intent was clear, and by then I'd seen enough evidence to know that our marriage was over. When it was my attorney's turn to cross-examine, she did her best to paint me as a neglected wife driven to seek emotional connection elsewhere. Mr. Crane, would you say you were an attentive husband during this period? I could have been better. You worked long hours, often came home late, spent evenings on your laptop instead of engaging with your family? Sometimes yes. Isn't it possible that your wife's friendship with Mr. Foster was a symptom of problems in your marriage rather than the cause? Deacon considered this carefully. I think we both made mistakes. But when I realized there were problems, I tried to address them. Philomel chose to look outside our marriage instead of working with me to fix what was broken. The simple truth of that statement hit me like a physical blow. When I took the stand to testify on my own behalf, I tried to explain the loneliness, the neglect, the way Ben had made me feel valued and appreciated. But under cross-examination, my justifications sounded hollow. Mrs. Crane, you sent intimate photographs to Mr. You sent intimate Foster while your husband and daughter were in the same house, didn't you? It was just a selfie. Nothing inappropriate. You told Mr. Foster details about your intimate life with your husband? I was venting. I was frustrated. You made plans to meet Mr. Foster at a hotel for sexual purposes? I was confused. I canceled those plans. But you made them. Yes. While you were married. While you were living in the same house as your 7-year-old daughter. Yes. Each admission felt like another nail in my coffin. By the time I left the witness stand, every mistake I'd made was public record. The worst moment came when Deacon's attorney called my former co-worker, Sarah. She said I'd been distracted, always texting, glowing when flowers arrived from my friend. When she'd warned me people were talking, I'd told her to mind her business. Hearing it now made me sick. Then came the revelation that Ben, my so-called soulmate, had refused to testify. The man I'd risked my family for wouldn't even show up to help me keep my daughter. My lawyer tried to paint me as a flawed but loving mother. Deacon's lawyer dismantled me in minutes, describing a pattern of deceit and selfishness. When the judge returned, her words were sharp and final. Primary custody to Mr. Crane, supervised visitation every other weekend. I sat frozen as Deacon exhaled, relief washing over him. In the hallway, I saw our daughter holding a drawing that didn't include me. Everything I'd justified, every message, every lie, had led here. Deacon paused before leaving. "I'm sorry it came to this," he said softly. And I believed him. He hadn't been perfect, but he'd been good, faithful, real. I'd destroyed that for the illusion of being wanted. Now I had all the freedom I'd demanded, and nothing left to lose but the guilt that would never leave me. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching,